to 10 of those a month. We also deal with almost 30,000 open records requests, so if cities or any kind of municipality, any kind of government has a question about whether they need to turn over information to a taxpayer, they will ask us, and we will give them opinion based on the law. So obviously in Texas, we're very much of an open government transparency state, so typically they have to have a pretty solid exception to get out of turning those over. We also have a criminal division, and as was mentioned, we just prosecuted somebody for voter fraud. Obviously that's a big deal for Governor Abbott, it's a big deal for us because it's so hard to catch, and so when we catch it, we like to make sure that we prosecute it because we want to send a message that you cannot get away with this in Texas. And obviously we have other investigations going on even in Tarrant County, as you probably already know. We have a Solicitor General's office, and some of you may be familiar with that because of Ted Cruz. He was one of the first Solicitor Generals. And that job, a lot of people don't understand exactly what that does, but that job really is about taking our cases to higher court. So oftentimes our Solicitor Generals, and we have about 25 to 30 of them, with a guy named Scott Keller who heads it up, 25 to 30 people, and they take the cases to the Texas Supreme Court, they'll take them to the Fifth Circuit, they'll take them to the U.S. Court of Appeals, and they'll take them to the Supreme Court. So we have the best top-notch Solicitor General's office in the country, which is why, and I'll get to this in a minute, why we have so many lawsuits against the federal government, because so many people count on that. We also have a special litigation division, which I started, and we started that so that we weren't just on defense with the Obama administration, we could go on offense. And so we've been trying to gear that up and hire the best and brightest that we can to head up our special litigation division. And then finally, we have a general litigation division that covers about 312 lawyers, and they deal with representing the state, all the state agencies, really almost anything you could think of, they deal with. Just so you know, we have about, anybody know how many employees run the Attorney General's office? Any guess? 4,200 people and over 100 offices. 62% of that, approximately, is child support. So that's a big part of what we did. I'll talk about that in a minute. But it's a big office. We have 800 lawyers, and I've been actually really impressed with the quality over the 2 years that I've been in that office, with the quality of the people that are working in my office. So let me talk about a few other things that we work. We have a law enforcement division, which has about 180 police officers. A lot of people don't realize that we deal with that. And really, we deal with 3 different types of issues. We will get asked to deal with others, but what we focus on is tracking down child predators. And we've done sting operations all over the state, really to try to stop that from happening in our state, sending the message to these child predators, this is not the state to do it in, because we're going to get you. We also have a real focus on tracking down fugitives. Sometimes we'll track down over 100 fugitives in a month. So if there's a fugitive in this room, we are going to get you. And then something that was near and dear to my heart, because I learned a lot about it, obviously I have 3 daughters, and is human trafficking. We started a human trafficking unit at the beginning of last year with 3 attorneys and 5 investigators. Largely first with the goal of educating people about human trafficking, because people are so unaware of the signs of human trafficking and what to look for. And so if you go on our website, you'll find information about that, but also my people are willing to go really anywhere in the state to talk about it, just to educate people. And then second, if we can't stop it, we want to make sure that we prosecute it. So we obviously had a huge case that started in October where we arrested the CEO of Backpage, which is a Dallas-based company. And we actually caught him coming in from the Netherlands in Houston, arrested him. 30 minutes later, we were in their offices, getting their computers and their files, and then we had him he was extradited to California. So California has their ongoing prosecution. We're still working on ours, and so those are the type of people. And if you don't know what Backpage is, the largest online purveyor that we believe, the largest online purveyor of prostitution and human trafficking, not just in Texas, but we think maybe the entire world. And so we're sending the message that we're not going to put up with human trafficking in Texas, because Texas, for the most part, on most of the good lists, we're at the top, but we're also on top of a very bad list. We're number 2 in the nation for human trafficking, and the worst city in the country is Houston. So that is a list that we don't want to be at the top of. We also have, I talked about child support and what a big part it is for us. Texas obviously cares about collecting child support because for the custodial parent. And some of that is we certainly want to take care of our children. We also want to make sure that people don't need government assistance as a result of parents not taking care of their kids. And so it's a big effort. We have almost 1 million clients that we deal with a year. Texas is particularly good at it. We collected over $4 billion last year. The closest state, well, just to give an example, of California, which is much larger than us, they collected $2.3 billion. And for every dollar that we spend on child support collections, we collect about $12.27. The closest to us is South Dakota, and they collect about $10.50. California collects about $2.50. So we try to continue to increase that efficiency because it results in what we think is good public policy, helping children, and also saving the state a lot of money. So we'll continue to push to improve that. One of the issues, I want to talk about one of the issues that we've really focused on, one that I did not expect, is religious liberty. And I did not expect that. It didn't seem like it would be something you'd see in Attorney General's office, but it started off obviously pretty quick. We were asked for an opinion by the Children's Police Department, and they asked us, could they legally put "In God We Trust" on our vehicles? And this was a relatively, I told you we do opinions, this was a relatively short opinion. It basically says, of course you can. This is the motto of our country. The official motto is "In God We Trust." It's on our coinage. And so we felt like the case law was very supportive of that. We issued the opinion. And as I've driven around the state since then, I get a huge smile when I see all these police vehicles in different counties now that say "In God We Trust." And I think largely due to that opinion. As you know, religious liberty can be a very divisive issue. It can be very challenging. You know, it's interesting, the assault that we've had to deal with over the last several years. I simply was asked by the Lieutenant Governor to issue an opinion on whether county clerks, after the marriage decision of Bergefell, where same-sex marriage was authorized by the court, and they authorized a newly minted 14th Amendment right to same-sex marriage. We were asked by the Lieutenant Governor, well, does that eviscerate the First Amendment rights of county clerks if they don't want to marry these people, if it's against their First Amendment right or their religious views? We answered that by saying, of course they still have a First Amendment right. That can be done by somebody else in the office, and so if they have a religious objection, they should not be forced to perform that marriage. Well, we issued that opinion. The media misinterpreted what we actually said, changed the wording. I know you're shocked by this. And then I got basically a bar complaint filed by, I think it was 150 liberal lawyers. And then I had to go through this long process of a bar complaint where they were trying to punish me or take away my license. Obviously, that would be in complete violation of my First Amendment rights and my constitutional obligation to issue opinions. We finally won that. That's typical of the way the left has dealt with these types of issues. I want to tell you about two others. One is Little Sisters of the Poor. We filed an amicus brief of that, which an amicus brief is basically a friend of the court brief to describe to the court what the law actually is. And so we filed that on behalf of 20 other states. And if you don't know the story, Little Sisters of the Poor is a group of nuns taking care of the poor. And when Obamacare came out, they were being forced by the Obama administration to change their health care plan to cover contraceptives, which is in direct violation of their religious views. And so they sued the administration. We stepped in and filed our amicus brief. And fortunately, the Supreme Court, obviously viewing this as a very touchy subject, remanded it back to the district court. In that case, I think will be resolved favorably to these nuns, and they'll be able to continue their service without being forced to follow Obamacare. One more case that came up very, I guess in December, we found out from Killeen ISD that that there was a principal in Killeen ISD that was going to force a staff person to take down their Charlie Brown Christmas poster. I don't know if you all heard this, because it had a scripture from Isaiah about the birth of Christ on it. Of course, this is Charlie Brown. And so we actually wrote a letter to the school board. They were about to have a meeting that night to vote on whether this principal was correct. And we told them that we would be happy to represent them if they were sued. And I want other school districts to know, if you get sued over these things, you don't have to worry about being sued or about the cost of it. We'll help you. And I wanted to send that message, and so we sent the message. So we sent that message, and the school board roundly voted 6-1 to make her take it down. We were happy to help them, and so the next day we sued them. And that afternoon, we were in court in Bell County, and when I saw the district judge come in, I know there's some judges in the room, and and the district judge had a little Christmas tie on. I was pretty optimistic about how things were going to go. Kind of spoke for itself. And so by that afternoon, there were pictures taken that were sent to me by text showing this staff member putting her poster back up on the wall. Sometimes, you just got to speak up, and these religious liberty issues are important to speak up, and if you speak up, you can win, because the First Amendment was obviously something that our founders deeply cared about. That's why many of them came here, because they valued religious liberty, and despite the onslaught, we're still right on the law, and we'll still continue to fight that. I don't think that's the last case we're going to be involved in, and we're involved in some actually going on right now. So continue to watch as we fight to preserve that part of our freedom. I also want to talk finally about just some of the cases that we filed against the Obama administration, because I think it's important to understand, even as we now have a new president, what those cases meant, why they were filed, and what it means for our future, because it really will have a tremendous impact on our future, what we've already done and where we're going. So just to give you a flavor of some of the cases, and then I'll give you kind of a summary of why they're really all the same. So we filed cases against the Bureau of Land Management because they decided that they somehow, when the Red River moves, that somehow they own the property. When the Red River moves, somehow they own the landowner's property, and so the landowners sued. We sued on behalf of the state, saying the federal government's now stealing not only they're stealing the property owner's land, but they're also stealing our revenue from taxes. So that's one case that we still have going. We also have a case going on Obamacare. Everybody thought Obamacare was set. Obviously, Congress is now looking at repealing it, but Texas, along with a few other states, has a lawsuit challenging Obamacare because in the statute there is no taxation for the states, and yet Obama, through his agencies, started taxing all of the states, costing the state of Texas about $120 million a year, costing the states in general probably $2 billion a year. So we sued on behalf of ourselves and other states to stop them from taking our money without any statutory authority to do so. By the way, I didn't finish this, but I know that people are deeply concerned about what I'm going to do now that Trump is in office and that Obama's gone, that I can't sue the federal government. And I've had people suggest, lots of things for me to do. Maybe take an extra vacation day, maybe just take Fridays off, maybe go to California once in a while, or maybe just get counseling. But I want you to know it's going to be okay, because I still have the city of Austin to sue. And we have sued them, I think, 3 times this year, so there's plenty to do. And as you'll see, as I talk more about these cases, you'll see there's still plenty for us to focus on. So we also had many cases against the EPA. I think we've had 12, 13, 14. It's actually hard to keep track of how many we've had to file. Big cases. The Clean Power Plan, we led the way with West Virginia. 27 states sued the federal government. Think about that. 27 states sued the federal government. And it was a case that would have cost potentially the country 29 to 39 billion a year, according to some studies, would have reduced our reliability of electricity, would have taken the electricity regulation away from the states, put it at the federal government, and cost us a lot of money without any statutory authority to do it. So we are in that fight right now. We're hoping, as the new EPA administrator, by the way, was, what's that? Oh, Scott Pruitt.
Yeah, I know.
He was the Oklahoma Attorney General, and it's kind of nice. He actually was in my lawsuit suing the federal government. So now he's on the other side, so I'm looking forward to working with him. Do you see what an election can do? So that's the EPA. We also won just recently, really in November-ish, right after Donald Trump won the election. We had 2 very strong successes against the Department of Labor. One was called the Persuader Rule, where they had decided that if a company had a lawyer that gave them advice on unions, that now had to be disclosed to the government, and therefore the union, everything that the attorney told them. Now, that's called attorney-client privilege. And I understand it's only been around about 600 years, but the Obama administration decided in this case that the attorney-client privilege should disappear. We got a preliminary injunction in November from a judge in Sherman, Amos and Zant, which means that basically we won. Now, that doesn't mean it's all over, but we had to show irreparable harm and likely to win on the merits, and basically he put a stop, literally the night, I think it was the night before it was supposed to go into effect, he put a stop to it. We also had a case on overtime, and actually this was the one in Sherman, where every business in America was going to have to really increase their costs and pay more overtime to almost twice as many people without any statutory direction from Congress. And so we were able to file that along with, I think it was 20 states, and get that stopped. Another preliminary injunction. And then, more recently, I'm sure you've heard a little bit about the bathroom cases. So that was really interesting, because when we started it, nobody wanted to get involved. I couldn't get any of their AGs involved, so I started talking about it on places like CNN, MSNBC, and they kept hitting me on issues that were unrelated, and I just kept telling them, listen, this is about the Constitution. This is a president that decided to change the law without any authority from Congress to force schools in our state and across the country to allow boys and girls bathrooms, showers, locker rooms, hotel rooms. And he did it without any authority. He literally just changed the law, just changed how the statutes were worded. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you think that's a great policy. I don't care. It doesn't matter. We are going to sue you, and we are going to win. So we got another preliminary injunction, stopping that not just in Texas, not just the 13 states that filed with me, but we got a preliminary injunction across the entire nation, so no school would have to deal with this. So, and then on New Year's Eve, we got another preliminary injunction, similar issue where the Obama administration was trying to force doctors to provide, what would you call them, like sex change operations or gender reassignment surgeries, despite the fact that the doctor might object based on either their moral views or their professional medical judgment. They were still being required to do it. And so we filed another lawsuit, and the court gave us another preliminary injunction literally the night before it was going into effect. This was Christmas Eve, December 31st of 2016. We got another preliminary injunction. So you might have thought, okay, the state of Texas is done, Obama's about to be out of office, but no, we actually filed 2 more lawsuits in his last week in office just to finish things off. So that's how we got to 22. And so what's the moral of this story? Well, the moral of this story is, despite the fact that, well, let me tell you about one more case, because it plays right into the moral of the story. The immigration case. So the immigration case was really created by President Obama over about a 6-year period, from the time he started campaigning until November-ish, November of 2014, so 6 years. I think it was 22 times that he said, I don't have the authority to change immigration law, Congress has to do it, I am not a king, I'm not an emperor, this has to be done through the constitutional process. Despite saying that over and over, in November 2014, he came out and he said, I changed the law. Now this is a president who complained about George W. Bush issuing executive orders. Now this president is literally just changing the law. And so Governor Abbott, then General Abbott, on his way out the door in December, filed a lawsuit on this immigration issue with 26 other states, again a remarkable number. And I would complain to him that he filed it and then left me all the work, which is true. And but it was a great lawsuit, and we took that. It was I think it was my 3rd week in office. We went into court in the Southern District of Texas, and we were successful. Judge Hainan gave us another preliminary injunction, stopping the case in its tracks. Of course, the Obama administration appealed that to the 5th Circuit. The 5th Circuit again agreed that the president didn't have the authority to change the law. And then they appealed it to the U.S. Supreme Court, and unfortunately Scalia had just passed away, and so we didn't have Scalia. But we ended up tying, which meant the 5th Circuit decision stayed in place. And I can tell you that it has been characterized often that was the Obama administration's biggest legal defeat in their entire 8 years. And that legal defeat was significant. I'll give you all have heard of the Huffington Post before? Yeah. Not exactly my fan, don't love me. But they wrote an article in August of 2016, something like to the effect that Texas was having a party. And they were complaining about me because we were winning. And they were complaining about the Obama administration because they were claiming that Texas had figured out how to beat the Obama administration. And that was file these lawsuits based on constitutional statutory law, recruit other states to get involved, and then go get a preliminary injunction or a stay and stop it from going into effect. And so just the fact that the Huffington Post is probably my favorite article ever, and they were not nice to me, but they acknowledged that we had been successful. And I think that sometimes we underestimate the importance of our state and the leadership that you all vote for. I mean, Tarrant County, I would not be here but for Tarrant County. Tarrant County, when I ran in the runoff, which is significant, gave me 70% of the vote, gave me more votes than any other county in the state. You notice I haven't forgotten that. But it is significant that you put conservative leaders in place in Texas because we end up leading. Every other state, when we got that preliminary injunction in Southern District of Texas in my third week, and then we took it up to the Fifth Circuit and won again, and went to the U.S. Supreme Court and basically won again. Every other state saw the professionalism, the talent, and the ability and the desire for us to be successful, and that led to the momentum that we had of getting all these states, as we filed lawsuit after lawsuit, everybody wanted to be part of our lawsuits. And so that force, if you think about what happened, we had a president who was ignoring what was so fundamentally important to our founders. That was separation of powers. And why did they care about the separation of powers? They cared about the separation of powers because they did not trust people in power. And so they didn't make government easy, they made it hard. And they split it up. A bunch of Presbyterians who believed in the depravity of man. It's true. And so they created 3 branches of government and divided the power. And then they also left most of the power with the states. Well, President Obama, after he lost Congress, he passed Dodd-Frank, he passed Obamacare, decided, I'm not going to deal with Congress anymore. For 6 years, he didn't. What he did was he changed the law through agency or through executive order, just rewrote statutes, and then he had Congress sitting in the background who would not defund them, and that's really their only power to stop it. They were being stripped of their power. So were the courts. The courts had adopted something called Chevron deference. What does that mean? It means that if the agency had, or if Congress had some statute that wasn't clear and the agency interpreted it, pretty much the federal courts would just go with it. And so the courts were stepping back, Congress was stepping back, and what made the difference is the states. The states said, no,